Greeting Hickson Prez. This is Pastor Robert coming to you with a quick update. Wanted to update you on a couple of things and talk through a couple of things. And number one is to let you know that we have vastly improved our live stream. We've got new hardware, new software. We've gone through the process of trying to integrate that into our current system to make it compatible and work out the bugs. We've had some bumps along the way, as you are probably well aware, but I wanted to let you know that we think we've worked most of that out and that we have a solid live stream to send into your home. And so if you haven't lately, I guess I wanted to encourage you to join us and to worship with us, and that the quality of the live stream, I think, has been improved, and that it will be good for all of us to be together. So worship with your church this Sunday. I would encourage you. Also, I wanted to let you know that starting September 6th, that is not this coming Sunday, but the next Sunday, we're going to stream the service live down to the pavilion. So it's going to run simultaneously with the service in the sanctuary. That we'll have a group in there, those who want to be inside, those who want to be in masks. We'll be worshiping together live in the sanctuary, streaming it to your home in an improved broadcast, but also streaming it simultaneously to the pavilion so that you can gather at the same time we are outside. Some of you have been waiting for an outside version. You feel safer outside, and so this is your opportunity. Down there, we're going to have a large screen TV and a speaker. There's obviously a roof on the pavilion, which gives some permanent shade. We've installed some fans in the roof of the pavilion to provide some relief down there. May not need them as we move into September and October, but Lord knows. But this will be a great option for you if you've been waiting to gather with God's people. We're hoping there'll be a solid group down there so that it will be corporate worship, gathered with God's people, singing, and a good option to, I think, double the capacity that we have to have people joined in corporate worship. So please come outside, come inside. And if you can't do one of those and you're not comfortable yet, join us online. Let me talk about how the church is responding to the pandemic. We put out some policies, and it's interesting to me that almost every week I get feedback on how people feel about those policies, and there are those who feel like we've done a great job and they're really happy with what we've done, and there are others who feel like that we haven't done any of it right. So you may be in there from one end of the spectrum to the other, and I understand. The country's on a spectrum, the church is on a spectrum, and as I've talked to other pastors and see what they're doing, they're all having the same debates and the same issues. So let me just talk briefly about the science of it, the politics of it, and the Bible. In terms of the science, your session has sought to be well read. We have read dozens and dozens of articles. We have sought to understand the issues. We don't want to take anybody's word for it and this or that, or just blindly do what we're being told. We want to understand it, or at least I have. And there are a number of convictions that we have come to. And so this drives a great deal of what we're doing, is our understanding of the science. So, number one, we believe that COVID-19 is not a hoax. We may debate how bad the disease is. We might debate whether we have overreacted to the disease. Those are legitimate debates to be having. But I don't believe it's up for debate on whether COVID-19 is a real disease that is killing people here in America and around the world. We also believe that our older neighbors with underlying our older neighbors and those with underlying conditions are more vulnerable than we are. That probably accounts for half of our church. Whether they're our older neighbors or have underlying conditions, that's about half of our people. So we want to be careful. We believe that the transmission of the disease is largely airborne. I think the science has arrived at that place. We believe that that's correct from our understanding. And so we believe social distancing is helpful, and we believe that masks are helpful in certain circumstances. And one of those circumstances, in our opinion, is when you have large groups of people in a confined indoor space. So large gatherings for any length of time in indoor spaces, masks can help. And so in worship, we are asking folks to wear them. Is some of this exaggerated? Is it an overreaction? Is it overdone? Maybe, possibly. We may find that out in the months and years ahead. There are those who are convinced that will be the case. And if so, in our mind, the worst case is that we erred in the direction of caution because we love our vulnerable people and we want them to be safe. So what you should know is that we are simply trying to be thoughtful about the science and making the best decisions we can. And so then when it comes to the politics of it, there really aren't any for us. It really doesn't enter into our conversations or our decisions. We're trying to think Christianly about the science. For us, it's not political. We are passionately convinced of the church's privilege and responsibility to gather and worship, and we are gathering, and we will continue to gather. And I hope that as you're able, you'll join us inside or outside and or online. We hope that you'll join us because it's not about the politics. For us right now, it's about the worship. It's about being together. It's about being the church. And whatever you think about these things, we ask you to leave them at the door and join us to be the church together. Personally, I'm saddened when people turn these issues into political and spiritual battles. And personally, I don't believe that these things that we're doing in our policy are either. And I know that others are passionately committed that they are, but I believe they're good, honest, God-loving, Bible-believing Christian people doing the best they can to understand the science and love God's people and make good decisions that protect and love everybody. And we find that our decisions are in line with the majority of churches in our denomination, around the city, and outside of our denomination. Not with everybody, but with many or most. Finally, I would say, in terms of the Bible, I would say my conviction is that there's no such thing as a biblical way to do this. In the sense, there's no one right biblical way. All we have is biblical principles. There are lots of things that the Bible does not specifically address and give you an outline of exactly what to do or how to do it. But it gives us principles. And so what God's people do is they try to understand those principles and apply them to the best of their understanding and convictions to given situations. And that's what God's people are doing. Bible-loving, godly people are applying biblical principles, but some of us land in different places. That's not new for the church. Look around. On almost every theological and other kind of biblical issue, there's a variety of God-loving people who are applying those principles to their convictions and understanding differently. But we're committed to gathering. We're just committed to doing it in a way that is safe for God's people. Our conviction is that COVID-19 is a real threat to God's people. And we are doing the best that we can to our commitment to gather and to be together and to love and to protect God's people while we do it. Is there other ways to do it? Is the way that we're doing it the only loving biblical way? No, we're not saying that. And I think anybody who is erring, because I think that often there are more than one ways to apply God's God-given principles in situations like this, and good and godly people will differ. So we continue to ask for your patience with us in the way that we are trying to love God's people, and the way that we are applying these principles, because we're not being political, and we're not scared, and we're not being mindless. We are being thoughtful in the application of biblical principles and the science to the way that we do church. We're grieving over the things that are lost. As I have conversations with people, there's such a passion to be together, to sing, to be the church in fellowship, and we share those things, and we grieve together over what is lost, the challenges that we are facing, the differences and the debates and the arguing and the distance that has grown in so many ways. And it is difficult, and there's much to grieve. But my friends, this is going to pass. This too will pass. The issues that we're struggling with will fade with the disease, and sooner or later it will. But the church of God abides forever. My friends, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. The bathwater will fade, but the baby is God's church, and it will abide forever. And so embrace it, and don't let these things separate us. Join us. My friends, I will urge you, as Paul did to the church in Ephesus. He said, I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called. And do it with all humility. We need more humility. Gentleness. He says, with patience, bearing with one another in love, especially where we disagree. Bearing with each other in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. I pray that we are all eager to maintain the unity. Let me close with this. I heard a statistic this week that said, I think from Barna, that 20% of all churches will close in the next 18 months because of COVID. Like restaurants and businesses around us, that 1 in 5 churches will close its doors forever because of COVID. So it is clear, whatever else God is doing in the pandemic, and I have no doubt He has many purposes in it, there is no doubt that one of them is to prune His church and to prune His people. And He's doing that. I feel pruned every day, and I know that some of you do. But our leadership is planning that despite the pruning, and maybe because of the pruning, to emerge on the other side of this strong and even stronger. And that's, to a large degree, dependent on maintaining the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. It depends on all of us. These are crazy times, and everything is harder. Church is harder. Worship is harder. Fellowship is harder. Ministry is harder. Everything is harder. Work is harder. Shopping is harder. Eating is harder. Everything is harder. And so I believe, as God's people, though, to be strengthened with all might according to His glorious power, we're called to step up in the face of COVID, in our commitment to remember our membership vows and commitments that we made to the church, that all of us have committed to support the church in its worship and in its work to the best of our ability. And just like a marriage vow, those vows are important in times of hardship, in times of struggle, in times when things are hard. Those are when the vows kick in to support the church in its worship and its work to the best of your ability. My friends, we may emerge from this time pruned, scared, scarred, humbled, not scared, scarred, humbled, but by God's grace, stronger. May it be so, in the name of Jesus. Amen.